Welcome back to the channel, beautiful people. Let's talk about foods that are hurting your mental health. Working in psychiatry and in mental health, dealing with patients, it is often the way of dealing with mental health issues by prescribing a pill, switching medications, increasing doses. And these are ways that are manipulating our body to do something that we would like for it to do. And I am not saying that there are not some people who may feel the benefit of that. But whenever we're manipulating our body, more than likely we are increasing the likelihood of side effects, because these are not natural ways to get the body to do what it is that we would really like for our body to do. So I want to talk about 3 foods that are hurting your mental health, because when we can correct the things that we're putting into our body, this system that functions, then we can help things to operate in a more natural way. So when we're thinking about our body, we're thinking about a temple. We're thinking about this vessel that we want to work a certain way and do things for us in a certain way. We should think about what it is that we're consuming in this body and how that's impacting the way this body functions. The same way we would think about our car, the quality of gas that we would put in our car, the quality of oil that we put in our car, who we take our car to do the work on the car. We think about that when we care about the car, because everyone's work is not going to be what is really going to help our car run and operate in a smooth manner. And there are other people who we will take our car to, because we know when they do the work, they do it correctly. So when we talk about food, we want to look at food and the food choices that we make as those things that are going to help our body to operate in the most effective way. We also want to think about the foods that are causing us to have a poor operating system. And so we're going to talk about 3 of those things. There are 3 ingredients that are often found in different foods that are problematic. So let's get started. But before we do, hit the like button and let's get started. The first food that we consume that is impacting our mental health, I'm calling it food because we're consuming it as it is food, as if it's food, and that would be processed foods. Processed foods are foods that have gone through a lot of different man-made changes to get end result. So it's nothing natural about processed foods. Most processed foods are created in a factory. It's not in nature. It's not natural. And usually there are a lot of chemicals that are in processed foods. A lot of chemicals are added to processed foods, and a lot of nutrients are pulled out of processed foods. And the reason that a lot of nutrients are pulled out of processed foods is because the goal is to help to make this food taste a certain way that is appeasing to your palate, and it's also a way to preserve the shelf life of a food. So when you have to think about, well, we don't have to, but I encourage you to think about, we're living in a system that is highly influenced by economic gain. And when we talk about greed, economic gain no longer cares about the impact that something will have on your physical health, nor your mental health. It is focused on what can we do to generate more money. And if that means pulling nutrients and putting toxins into a food to help it to have a longer shelf life, so you're not having to reproduce, which costs money, and then add additives to it that cause you to like the taste of it, regardless of what that looks like, that is what's being done in the United States in particular. A lot of processed foods that you are eating and that we are eating are not even allowed in other countries because of the toxicity levels and the harm that these foods can do to your body. And so when we talk about processed foods and mental health, when we're talking about our mental health, what helps our body to function well is to get nutrients into our body. And those nutrients also goes to our gut, which has a big part of the help of our mental. And it also goes to our brain, which obviously impacts our mental. So if we're eating things that lack any type of nutrients in it, it's just filling us up with calories, and we're eating something, so we might feel full for a moment, but it's not really giving us anything. This is something that impacts our mental health. When we don't have the nutrients that come from that food, then we really are nutrient depleted. There used to be this idea that when you're malnourished, you think of someone who's skinny, who's emaciated, who's skin and bones, and they are malnourished. But true malnourishment is when you're not getting nutrients. But what's happening is when we're eating these processed foods that have high fat intake, high fat and calorie counts, we're getting all of that, but it still doesn't have the nutrients. So there are many people who look like a normal size and also who are even heavier than the size that they really should be, who are also malnourished. So when we're malnourished, that means that we're not getting nourishment. That means our cells are not getting the nourishment. And when our cells aren't getting nourishment, that leads to that showing itself in our body, in our emotions, in our mind. And so many people's moods and their mental health, it shows up because there is a huge nutrient deficiency. So keep that in mind. When we're eating, we want to think about eating foods that are actually giving us something on a cellular level. And that comes from the nutrients, the vitamins, the minerals that the food contains. So that's number one. The second food that is hurting your mental health would be sugar. And it's no surprise, we know that sugar isn't good, especially refined sugar. We know refined sugar is no good for us. We know this. But when it comes to how it's impacting mental health, there are a number of ways. First of all, it's highly addictive. So once you start really eating sugar, and most people probably know this, it's hard to stop. You just crave the sugar. There was a study done with mice that they were given sugar and they were given cocaine. And these mice, after being exposed to both of these, went for the sugar more than the cocaine. We always think about cocaine as being highly addictive, which it is, but this really speaks to how much more addictive sugar is, and it's acceptable in our society, so we consume it. And it's in so many different foods that you wouldn't even think would have sugar, that don't even taste sweet, but it's in there because there's an addictive quality to sugar that draws you in more. And another study with sugar in rats showed that high sugar intake caused inflammation in the brain. And so neural inflammation in our brain is going to impact how well our neurotransmitters can communicate with one another. And when we talk about neurotransmitters, we're talking about chemicals that are helpful in mood. When we're talking about prescribing antidepressants or different medications for mental health, they are really working off of these neurotransmitters to get more of the neurotransmitters. But when our brain is inflamed, it's going to cause a problem just for the basic communication to happen between those neurotransmitters. And because of that, we can have an impact in our mood in many different ways. It's been shown that can impact our depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, when our neurotransmitters aren't able to communicate and function appropriately. So sugar, as much as it might taste great, let's think about sugars that are natural, the sugars that are in fruits. These are sugars that are the sugars that really help our body, that are important, that have a purpose and do something to help our body function better and be in more balance when we utilize those types of sugars. And I know this to be true for myself. When my sweet tooth was off the charts, if I got up in the morning, because I was not a great eater. If I got up in the morning and I started out eating something sweet, like from refined sugar, it was downhill the rest of the day. All I was going to eat was that type of food, or if we're going to call it food, because it's so addictive and you crave more. It causes you to have a spike and then it crashes you. So you feel energized for a moment, then you plummet and you don't have energy and you want more. But if I start out my morning and I do something like make a juice made of fruit, or eat fruit, then it's a different balancing that it does in the system with sugar. It's a more natural balance that helps sustain you, but it doesn't cause you to have all these spikes and dips, So understanding that sugar is a huge culprit for us that does us no good. And it really causes us to have so many more issues, even beyond our mental health issues. And then the third ingredient, food, whichever we would call it, that really does impact our mental health is alcohol. And many people use alcohol as a coping strategy because it's that initial feeling from it that may help a person who feels uptight to relax a little. Or for some people, it may help them initially go to sleep. But the long-term effects of alcohol, beyond the obvious, when it comes to our mental health, is that it actually causes more depression because alcohol within itself is a depressant. The substance is a depressant, but it also increases anxiety. And long term, it actually causes more issue with sleep because anxiety is increasing. So there are so many people I know who have issues with sleep. They may go to sleep initially fine, but then later in the night, they're not sleeping well, or if they don't drink, they can't sleep, or even if they're drinking, they begin to have issues with really being able to sleep because that alcohol causes an increase in anxiety for many people. So, really thinking about, wherever it is that you are, if you utilize alcohol, where you are with that. Some people, have more of a dependence on alcohol than others. If you're someone who doesn't have as much of a dependence on it, understand the impact of alcohol, and finding other ways to deal with anxiety, especially if you're coming into social situations, to really, start trying to find peace with yourself before you go into social situations, knowing who you are, building that confidence of who it is that you are, and also being in environments that are healthy environments so that you don't feel like you have to medicate yourself to go in environments that might be toxic. And then if you're someone who's dealing with more of a dependence on alcohol, to really begin to seek the help and the support that can help you to let go of that dependence. And I would say with that is that I know so many people who have done it. So there's nothing different between one person and you, if that is you, except finding the way to make it work for you. Everyone has the ability to be resilient in something that may have kept them down for a period of time. So alcohol is one of those things that for many of us, we could feel like it has kept us down because of the addiction that can come from it. But I want to really encourage that if you see people who and I deal with this in so many different ways in life when I feel like I can't do something. When you see somebody else doing something, that's a testament that it can be done. And so, I'm not saying how easy or difficult that could be for a person, but just know that these long-term impacts from alcohol really do play a major effect on how we feel and how we deal with life, because our mental and emotional health is really going to impact how we live out this life, how we enjoy this life, how we see this life, how we embrace ourselves, our relationships. It all gets impacted when our mental health is off balance. So I hope that these are 3 things that could give you some insight, and you could start to study yourself by pulling back from these and substituting it with something that's more healthy and more balanced. If one of these particular foods or substances spoke to you more, leave it in the comment section. Also, I would like to ask you to like this video, subscribe to this channel, as I'm creating more content in relationship to improving who we are in our mental, spiritual, emotional selves, that ultimately is showing up in our mental well-being and a strong, solid mental health. And I will be back in the next video. Share this also with someone who you think could really benefit, as I'm really trying to reach community to get us in a better state of our beingness. And I'll see you next time. Bye.